Alright, so in the previous video we talked about taxonomy and we kind of set us up for the 6 kingdoms. Now, there's this great website here that I want you guys to perhaps type in another little tab, but it's a great link and we're going to visit it in a little bit. Okay, but first let's talk about how things can be classified in the 6 major kingdoms. The first thing can be number. Okay, so for example, you could have one cell or you could have several cells. If you have one cell, more likely than not, you're going to be either eubacteria or you're going to be archaebacteria. And I know it's going to be a tight squeeze. So eubacteria or archaebacteria are only going to have one cell. If you're going to have several cells, you're going to be a eukaryote. So eukaryotic organisms are going to have several cells. They can also be based on the type of cell. So the first one was number. You could be one eubacteria or archaebacteria, or you could have several and you're going to be eukaryotic. So that one kind of hints you that they're going to be bacteria. Or you could be on type. Okay, so we just mentioned eukaryotic. Remember, eukaryotic, we're going to store our DNA inside of a nucleus. But in prokaryotic, those are going to be the more ancient ones, they don't have a nucleus. They're super tiny. They don't even have room for a nucleus. Their DNA is just kind of floating around in the cytoplasm. So number, 1 or 2, okay? Type, and also energy. That's going to be our third way that we're going to classify things. If they make their own energy, they're going to be known as autotrophs. So kind of like an automatic car, you don't have to constantly shift gears. It does it by itself, okay? That self means that they is auto, so that means that they create their own energy. If they have to eat to obtain energy, that means they have to go to a different food source. I want you guys to think back in genetics when we were talking about same and different. What was the prefix for different? The prefix for different was hetero, okay? So if autotrophs make their own energy, heterotrophs have to eat something or consume something else to get energy. So a quick recap, we have number, we have type, and we have how they obtain their energy. Right. So we had just talked about this great website, Tree of Life, at nmnationalhistory.org, and you're just going to look up Tree of Life once you get there. And you're going to examine the 6 different kingdoms. Now, the first 2 kingdoms, eubacteria and archaebacteria, are going to be prokaryotic. All right. So the first 2 kingdoms here are prokaryotes. Both eubacteria and archaebacteria. Both are going to be prokaryotes. So let's go ahead and write pro here. That means that their DNA is just kind of floating around. Remember, pro means no nucleus. Pro, no nucleus. Since they're going to be prokaryotic, they're also going to be single cells. They're all by themselves. Single-celled organisms. And another name for single cell is unicellular, right? Unicellular. They could be autotrophs or they could be heterotrophs in terms of energy. Now, some examples of E. coli, probably the most, some examples of eubacteria. Probably the most famous example is going to be E. coli. But let's check out this website. Again, that's treeoflife.nm naturalhistory.org. All right. So I already have it kind of opened here. And we have here this tree of life, and you see how when I mouse over, you could check out different branches of the tree of life. Okay, so we have bacteria, we have eukaryota, and we have archaea. Those are our three domains. Did King Philip come over for good soup? That D stands for domain. Okay, so let's check out bacteria. So we had E. coli. It says here that they're single cells, they lack a nucleus. Um, let's see, they are the most abundant in the world. They're found practically everywhere in the soil and water, even inside the intestines of your body. Okay, and here's one. It's called actinobacteria. Now, actinobacteria, they're going to be found everywhere, the soil, the plants, fresh water, and you see that it's kind of very well adapted to a variety of different environments. And you could kind of go ahead and check out all these different branches. Here's a very important one, cyanobacteria. This is an example of an autotroph because it creates its own food. This thing was around even before plants were, and what it did was it was the first photosynthesizer. It did that miracle of taking light and making food out of that light. It was the very first one, and plants just kind of copied it later on. So those are examples of bacteria, eubacteria to be specific. When we look at archaebacteria or archaea for the domain, these weren't very well understood because they were found in some extreme environments, okay? They were found on the ocean floor. They were found in like these hot sulfur pools, right? So let's check out one of these. Let's see, halobacteria. So halobacteria, that halo part means that it loves salt. It loves, loves, loves salt. Okay, so extremely salty environments. We have a bunch of methane-dependent bacteria. I believe this was our first one. So methane is this gas that we kind of use for fuel, but this thing can actually survive on methane. And where it makes its home is actually one of those places is in the human gut. It takes those nutrients and is able to help us digest these foods. So this one is super important so that you and I can survive because it helps us digest our food, right? So let's remember this methanobacterials or M. smithi. It's probably named after a very famous scientist. Okay, so let's see here. We had halobacterials. And M. smithi. You see here how we capitalize the genus. Okay. Now, we covered the first two kingdoms, but we still have four more to go. Protista, fungi, plantae, and animalia. Now, what I would encourage you guys to do is for these four eukaryotic organisms, excuse me, eukaryotes, did it again. These are all going to be eukaryotic, meaning that they do have a nucleus. So these are all part of the domain eukarya. Okay. Protista, fungi, plantae, and animalia. Right. So Protista is kind of a catch-all group. And to be honest with you, it's kind of faded into obscurity as time has gone on. Actually, let's use a different color since these are going to be eukaryotic. So we have our first two prokaryotic kingdoms, and we have four eukaryotic kingdoms. And so when we look at Protista, let's check this out here. We have fungi, we have unknown branches, we have animalia. Okay, here we go. So we got some pretty interesting stuff. All right, amoebozoa. Amoebozoa is going to be a branch from eukarya domain, and this branch are going to be protozoans. Okay, so let's go back over here. And so we said that they're eukaryotic. They're usually single-celled. These are very small eukaryotes. And they're also going to be a mix of autotrophs and heterotrophs. Again, it's kind of a catch-all group. We had all these microorganisms that weren't archaea, that weren't eubacteria, and we figured, okay, let's put them in Protista. So some examples include the amoeba that we just saw. An amoeba is kind of like a microscopic slug in the way it moves because it extends one part of its body and then kind of creeps along and drags the rest of its body. And it's single-celled. All right. So we have Protista. We have fungi, which are also going to be eukaryotic. They are definitely going to be multicellular. And they are going to be heterotrophic. So our fungi includes mushrooms. What they do is really they help decompose. So when we say heterotrophic, let's go ahead and put this word here, decompose. We have here the mushroom stalk, right? That kind of grows on the ground. Now this mushroom, what it does is it takes matter in the soil around it and it helps return those nutrients back to the soil. So it's very important in terms of the cycle of life. Plantae, okay, again, eukaryotes. They're going to be multicellular. And these are going to be autotrophic. They make their own food using the process of photosynthesis. So we have a plant. See if I could highlight it. There we go. And what happens is there's beams of sunlight that come in, and because of that, they're able to make a very important food called glucose. All right? I'm sure you guys know some examples of plants. We have giant sequoia trees out in California. We have the grass that grows on your lawn, might be Bermuda grass. We have really cool plants like the Venus flytrap. I mean, you guys could make a list longer than my list. All right, the last group that you guys are probably the most familiar with, and the last group, the last kingdom rather, that's eukaryotic, is going to be Animalia. They're eukaryotic, they're multicellular, and they are heterotrophs. They have to eat something to live. Even if you're a cow, you have to eat grass, right? So let's go ahead and put our cow here. We have monkeys. We have jellyfish. All the different types of animals. Okay. Again, this section is super important. You have to know characteristics of each of these organisms, as well as, excuse me, not each organisms, but characteristics of each kingdom. And kind of, you have to know the background of why they're sorted out that way. Again, I highly suggest visiting this website to help you guys kind of explore the different branches in this tree of life.